And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
Welcome, Buccaneers fans. This is RBLR Sports with the RBLR Bucs crew, your one-way ticket to the electrifying world of our beloved Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Whether this is your first time or 50th time, I want to say thank you for giving us a listen, and if you like what you hear, make sure to like and subscribe. My name is Musab. I'm one of tonight's hosts who's feeling pretty content and happy because I'll tell you this, the free agency market has opened up. All right, moves have been made, which we'll be discussing for sure. But there's just a whole lot going on. So I'll tell you this, I'm mad excited. But as always, I got Tampa Bay's hottest dynamic duo. Well, currently one of them's in Tennessee at the moment, or he's going to be there for a while. I'm not sure. But that being said, let's just get right to it, gentlemen. There is so much to talk about. So on my right, we got Zach Blaine in the house. Zach, talk to me, man.
What's going on, brother? I'm, just excited to be here as always. Another great day to be a Buck fan, and just excited to see some of the moves we've made.
Right on. Honestly, I feel like it's been forever since I've talked with both of y'all, just because of how much we've been chatting in our group chat. So, and to my left, the final puzzle piece to this iconic trio, he is Mr. Carter Brantley. Carter, what's the good word?
Oh man, it's been a great day. It's been a great week. We're coming at you a little bit later for our listeners wondering why we're coming out a little later in the weeks, because free agency. Like there was so much happening. We had to push back a little bit. If we would have released the episode on Wednesday, there's so much stuff we wouldn't have talked about. So I'm really glad to be talking some Bucs football with y'all. It was just a crazy week. I mean, it felt like every day there was something new. The pace is going to slow down, of course, because this NFL offseason is long and kind of painful at certain points. So it's good to have some hot news, some fresh stuff to talk about for sure. And we'll get right into it. The biggest news is Baker. He is back. I know Mr. Zach Blaine, you're repping. Yeah, I was going to say, you got to flash the number 6 to us. He's back. I mean, how are we feeling about this deal? Do you think they maybe paid too much, too little? What are your overall thoughts on it? Do you like that, it's only partially guaranteed, so that maybe Baker struggles next year, or maybe the Bucs want to move on? What are your overall thoughts? Musab, we'll start with you. We'll leave Zach for the last.
Okay. I was actually kind of waiting for Zach, but okay. All right. Well, what I will say this is I'm happy. Okay. And first of all, I want to start by saying that when I first found out about this news, I was like, this is great. Okay. And then later on, I actually saw this interview with Evan Klosky that Baker Mayfield did with shout out Evan Klosky. But I want to say this is during that video, he mentioned this thing called settling in. And I think that's the biggest thing. Okay. This is a job. And no matter how of amazing of a profession you are, going from employer to employer, it sucks. Okay. So I think that is one factor. But I'll tell you this, Baker Mayfield is someone who can take on challenges. And I think with everything else we've done so far during this offseason, with the moves we made already this past week, which we'll discuss for sure, I think it makes sense. Now, when it comes to the kind of money aspect of it, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it just because I think it gives him some motivation. And I think it's reasonable. He proved to us on his prove it deal last year, and I think he deserves a shot to really be that true leader of the Buccaneers.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with pretty much everything you said. I won't repeat any of it because that would just be redundant. But yeah, I thought it was perfect for both sides. I mean, really couldn't have put it much better. It was a great deal for both sides. Not really much else to say. But Zach, I know you've got a lot to say because you're hype as hell. So I made you sit there and wait a little bit. I'm sorry about that, but go for it, big dog.
No, you're good. I actually put a TikTok out about it a couple days ago. Go follow our TikTok if you're not. But I think that Baker could have gotten probably a lot more, not a lot more, but a bit more money than he got with us. I don't want to say he took the hometown discount that we were expecting, but in all reality, it's a 2-year contract. So God forbid he's not good like he was last year. We're essentially locked in for 2 years because after the second year, his dead cap hit's only like 9.6 million or something. So in all reality, we put up with mediocrity for 2 years at worst is kind of the way I look at it. So I think it was a win-win for both. I think Tampa made out better than Baker did in this deal. I'll be honest, but I'm happy about it. I'm excited to go buy some more Baker jerseys and enjoy having who I think could be our franchise quarterback.
Yeah, it's a great time. Great time to be a Baker Mayfield fan. Great time to be a Bucs fan for sure. Yeah, not a lot to complain about for either side, I think, on this deal. Because, for Baker, as much as you might be right, he might have been able to get some more money elsewhere. Absolutely. I think that the big thing for him, like Musab mentioned, was stability, not moving from place to place to place over and over again. I'm sure he was really excited to be able to settle in, like Musab said, and call a place home. So I think it really worked out well for both sides.
And with the family, like he's got a family now,
Yeah.
it's not just him and his wife, like he's got a legit family started. So I believe there was in one of the interviews he did, that was a big thing was his wife was getting kind of tired of the back and forth and moving around. It's been rough for her too. So I'm just excited for that whole family to kind of lay down their roots and they've been great in the community of Tampa, so I'm happy to see them get that opportunity to stay and be a part of it still.
Absolutely, getting to hang in the 813, not a lot of things better, or the 727, wherever they're ending up in the Tampa Bay area. But yeah, it's a great deal for both sides. Another returner, Lavonte David, he's back for a year. There were talk of him retiring, maybe. There was even a little blip where everyone's like, oh, maybe he's going to go to a contender. Kind of the same thing as last year. Just a whole lot of chatter. But he's back for another year. Really excited to see that. And on the other side of the linebacker position, as you might call it, Devin White, he's going to Philly. They're giving him a 1-year, $7 million deal. I thought it was a bit steep for Devin White, to be quite honest. $7 million is kind of a lot of money. Philly's been spending quite a bit of money for a team that was already a bit in rough shape for salary cap reasons. But regardless, this is a Bucs show, not a Philadelphia Eagles show. So we'll focus on the Bucs side of this. Devin White's gone. I know we've talked this to death, how he's been very inconsistent, to put it kindly. He wasn't great last year. He was getting benched for KJ Britt. There was a lot of drama and stuff going on. I'm kind of glad that they've kind of moved on. Now they have to replace him, though. They have to find a second linebacker. Are y'all hoping that they draft someone, maybe more of a long-term solution, or maybe you're looking for them to bring in more of a solidified veteran through free agency? Because there's still some options out there. Zach, I'll throw it right back to you, brother. What are you leaning more towards, drafting a replacement for Devin White or bringing in another veteran?
I think it's got to be a mix of both. I think we need to sign a veteran. Unfortunately, all the ones that I thought would be impactful are already kind of gone. All the ones that, like, the names that were intriguing to me are already gone. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Isaiah Simmons has signed anywhere yet. I would love to see him come in. He's, I think, the one that if we could get him, just imagining what Todd Bowles could do with the skill set that Isaiah Simmons has would be insane. I do think he might be a little too expensive still, but at this point, I wouldn't be surprised to see anything. So outside of him, I'm not sold on any of the free agents right now. So I think you need to still bring in a veteran guy, but also address it somewhere in the draft. I don't think it's as early as it needed to be before Lavonte was back, but I still think you need to do a little bit of both in this situation.
Absolutely. I like Isaiah Simmons a lot, but like you mentioned, the cost might be a little bit too much. And he's met with the Seahawks already, and Seattle needs to replace all three of their starting Jordan Brooks. Yep.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, Devin they need to replace him.
Or no, Devin Bush was going there.
Right. So yeah, I don't know, because the Seahawks met with Devin White as well, and they obviously weren't able to agree with him. So maybe Isaiah Simmons is the guy for them. But Simmons is certainly a name to watch. How about you, man? Though, are you kind of with Zach a little bit of both, or maybe you're more one side or the other? How are you feeling about it?
I'm a little bit of both, just because I believe that we still need to focus on getting as much as depth as possible, especially during the soft season. We'll see how, whoever wants, the actual starter role, the backup role. But first of all, really happy that we kept David, just because I love experience. All right. He's an amazing veteran. I mean, he's showing no signs of aging. Now, yeah, with the Devin White situation, as of right now, I can't think of anyone that I would want to get during the free agency period. I don't know. I mean, we've already talked about Isaiah Simmons, but he could be costly. So if there are some other names, feel free to drop them. But at the moment, I don't know any. But I think we're gonna definitely get someone in the draft and in the offseason for sure during free agency. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the both answer. I mean, it's kind of sitting on a fence, which is kind of the laziest way to answer a question. But at the same time, it's true. It's true. They're not going to just do one or the other. They're going to do a little bit of both because that's the way teams build. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see how they proceed with that position, just because it's an important one for this Bucs defense, especially in the context of not only this season but also moving forward. Because Lavonte David is back for this year, but this might be the last 1-year contract he signs. It might be just his last year as an NFL player.
It feels like it's going to be. I was expecting him to retire this year, if I'm being
honest.
honest.
I kind of was too. Yeah. So and good for him. He's had a very illustrious career. So it'd be great to see him finish his career as a Buck, whether it's this year or next year, whatever the case may be. But they still have to address this position regardless. So yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting. And another big thing that happened this week, instead of just re-signing people, the Bucs also traded someone, which I thought was very interesting. Our boy Joshua Quapo, who we had earlier on this offseason, he called it. He was like talking about, hey, the Bucs are maybe looking to deal one of their starting corners. I didn't necessarily not believe him, but it was kind of one of those like, oh, well, that's interesting. But boy, he was right on the money. He was right on the money. There's a reason why he's got so many followers on Twitter, why he writes for Pewter Report and all that stuff. So yeah, he does some great work over there. And he called it Carlton Davis III to the Detroit Lions for a 3rd-round pick, ironically enough. So I thought that was a really interesting deal. I kind of expected them, if they were going to trade him or Dean, to get a little less maybe. I didn't expect them to get a 3rd for either one of them. So I really liked this deal. I really liked the return. Davis is on the final year of his contract. It was unlikely the Bucs were going to re-sign him after this year. I know that Zion McCollum is probably not the ideal starter. We'll get into draft positioning and all that stuff in the second half of the episode because they're going to need to address the corner position. But I thought it was really good, a good value for the player. Musab, how are you feeling about it? Did you like the return?
I like the return. Okay, I mean they just gave a 3rd for like a what 14 million-ish like cap dump, from a guy who's been really inconsistent. It sucks, but we can't be paying big money to 2 slightly above average cornerbacks who are banged up too often. So it's kind of the same way I see our kind of linebacker situation. I think we need to bring some competition in. But also, I mean, hey, yeah, we got a 3rd rounder as well. So we can think about doing something with that.
Yeah. I mean, 3rd rounder, if they just sit tight with it and just use it, great. That's a very high value pick. No problem. And maybe they even package it to maybe try to trade up in the 1st or the 2nd round, or they package those 2 3rd-round picks to get back into this. Whatever they do with it, yeah, I'm with you. I loved the return. I thought this was a great deal. But Zach, how about you, man? I know that we've had our thoughts about Carlton Davis. How'd you feel about the return?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, in all reality, like, it sucks to see him go, but I think we could have lost either one, Dean or Carlton Davis, and been in the same boat we're in right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
He hasn't played a full season in, I believe, the last 3 seasons.
In a while.
So he's just I hate to see him go because he is, in my opinion, our CB1. Like, he is our cornerback 1. Absolutely. So that moves Jamel Dean up, and then Zion McCollum, and I don't have faith in Dean staying healthy either. So I think it weakens our secondary for sure, which we already had a not great secondary. So that part hurt. The 3rd-round pick, it's a good pick. I'm not hating on that, but we didn't get the 3rd-round pick for just Carlton Davis. We also gave up, I believe it was a 6th and a 4th
round.
I think it was just a 6th rounder.
I think it was. I know 6 for sure, but I don't know about the 4th.
I thought we gave up 2 picks. That's the only reason why I said that, but I could be wrong. I very well could be wrong. But I know for sure we gave up the 6th, and so it's like a 6th-round pick's not really anything crazy, and we weren't expecting to have that anyway because I believe it was our comp pick. So it's a good trade. I was surprised to see a 3rd, but hopefully it helps us in the future is, I guess, where I'm at with it. I'm kind of like mum on it, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah, I mean, Musab referred to it as a salary dump, and I don't know that it's a complete salary dump, but it certainly helps. Like getting rid of $14 million on the salary cap certainly isn't a bad thing. So I do like the flexibility that it afforded them. The Bucs traded 2 6th-round picks, by the way. They traded a 6th.
Okay, yeah, my fault. Yeah.
No, you're good. So yeah, I thought that the value was kind of interesting. There have been a lot of weird trades in the NFL this past week. A lot of kind of surprising player for player deals and player plus pick. It's been a weird week for sure. Very, very, very active week for front offices. Yeah. And this Carlton Davis was just one of them. And speaking of getting rid of players, unfortunately, they also cut Russell Gage. So they got rid of a couple of players. Russell Gage, tough stretch for him. He got hurt early last year, and the year before he was okay. Didn't really work out very well for the Bucs or Russell Gage. I'm sure he'll sign somewhere else and be fine. Hopefully he can stay healthy wherever he goes next. But in good news, they re-signed a bunch of people, including Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans and Lavonte David. They re-signed Greg Gaines, the interior defensive lineman, Chase Edmonds, the running back, as well as my favorite, another Chase McLaughlin, the kicker. I'm excited to see him kicking. I mean, I'm a huge Chase McLaughlin guy. He had one of the best seasons a Bucs kicker has ever had last year in terms of accuracy. So I'm really excited to see him keep kicking. Zach, how about you, man? Are you hype about these re-signings, specifically Chase McLaughlin?
Yeah, I love the Chase signing. The Chase Edmonds signing, I'm still a little confused on. I really expected him to be gone. I'm not mad about it. Like, he showed promise last year if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, he's fine.
The Greg Gaines signing, though, is probably my favorite. We talked about him in the playoff game where we stopped the tush.
Kind of look like him.
You know what? I'll take that. I'm not even mad about it. But honestly, he's just one of those dogs. Like, he's not going to put up big numbers. You're not going to see highlights of him. But if you watch him play, he'll get down there, he'll do what he has to do. He's not afraid to get dirty, get hurt. And I think it's important to have that depth behind Vea, because Vea hasn't been the healthiest. He's not always injured, but he's missed some time. So I love the Greg Gaines sign. I think is my favorite of the secondary signings.
For sure. Musab, how about you, big dog? How are you feeling about these re-signings, bringing these 3 guys back?
I feel real good. I mean, I got absolutely nothing bad to say. Never have about Chase McLaughlin. Always loved the guy. I mean, he showed up every single game for sure. Chase Edmonds, I'm fine with. I think, if we'd run it back with him, maybe we see some better things from him this year. Greg Gaines, just like Zach had mentioned, and this is just how I believe it. This is football. Things happen. People get injured and all that. So I feel like having reliable depth is big. If this team wants to have any success, having reliable depth is going to be big for us. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved all 3 signings. I know Chase Edmonds was hurt a little bit last year, and the run game was not very good. But I think that if the Bucs are going to spend any money on the running back position, Chase Edmonds is a fine place to spend a little bit of money. And then maybe they spend that Lions pick on a running back. Maybe they spend that 3rd-round pick that they got from them. Hey, whoever it is, whatever they decide to do with it, I think that'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out. But a sort of reuniting as well. Another guy that they brought back, but not really a re-signing, Jordan Whitehead, the safety who was playing with the Jets for a little bit. He played there for a few years. He had a really nice year last year. Had a quartet of interceptions, 3 of them coming in one game. He graded out relatively well in Pro Football Focus, and especially compared to Ryan Neal. I mean, my goodness, he's going to be a huge upgrade there for sure. So I was really excited to see that. They also signed Bryce Hall, another secondary member from the Jets. He's a cornerback. He's been a bit banged up over the years, but when he does play, he's relatively productive. I think it's a nice high ceiling, kind of low floor kind of deals. Because, he is banged up, he's injury prone, but, he's more of a depth piece. They're not going to have him, if they do have him starting, they're it's just because someone got injured. You know, it's because
We're-
he's filling in for
We're
Jamal.
one game away from Jamal Dean getting injured anyway. So
Sure, yeah,
playing.
absolutely, absolutely, and you know, we'll get, like I said, we'll get into the draft stuff, but they're obviously going to have to spend some draft capital on the secondary in general, specifically corner, safety, what have you. So I thought that both of these signings were really nice. But how are y'all feeling about this in terms of the secondary? Does this kind of set the draft need for the secondary down? Or does it you're kind of just like, well, this is nice, but the Bucs still need to draft some guys. Musab, we'll start with you, man. How did these signings affect the secondary viewing in the draft world?
Well, I mean, I was really happy with the Whitehead signing. I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. Massive upgrade over Ryan Neal.
For sure.
This guy, I mean, I'll tell you this. I mean, I don't remember all the stats, but I did hear Jordan Whitehead did amazing with the Buccaneers, and I think even with the Jets, I mean, I think he did just as good. I think people would just really focus on those kind of first couple games, especially that game against the Bills where he racked up those 3 interceptions. But on the other hand, now with Bryce Hall, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't know too much about the guy. I had a Jets buddy who told me basically just kind of a depth piece. Obviously, he went through his own kind of challenges with injuries and all that, and then he was kind of under the shadows of Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed.
Sure.
But what I'll tell you this is, I mean, hey, look at our secondary. We get banged up every single year, so we can use all the depth we can get. This guy's got experience. The kind of vibe I was getting from my Jets fan friend was that it's not like he's a kind of complete reliability. You know, he can still kind of get the job done if your starter is out. So I'm fine with it. But I do think that we definitely need to think about it in the draft as well. Just because our DB room's always been ugly. You know, it's to me, it's like the more the merrier.
Yeah, I mean, the more the merrier for sure, because all 3 of them could, you know, Zion McCollum, Bryce Hall, and Jamel Dean could all be injured, unfortunately. I mean, we've seen that happen with the Bucs these days.
The
I
next
mean,
second, you know, you got D. Delaney in the playing on
that's
the
right. That's
Stop
right.
talking trash on D. Delaney, damn it.
I'm sorry. He's a friend of the program. We love D Delaney around here. We mean it all in jest. You know, it's all in good fun. But no, yeah, we don't want to see D Delaney as a starting outside corner. I'm sure he doesn't want to see that. No, nobody does. But Zach, how are you feeling about this? Does this affect the draft needs at all for the Bucs?
So I feel like we've got to clarify, at least I do. When I say it, secondary, I don't put it all together. I individualize it by corners and safeties. Because I think our safety room is good. I'm happy with our safety room now. The amount of run support that Jordan Whitehead produces is insane. He's so good against the run. I'm not worried about him against the pass, but the run is where I love him. So his ability to stop the run is just insane, and I love that for that duo of Winfield and Whitehead. Like, that's going to be insane to watch. Like, it's never been seen before. We saw it 2 years ago. So
3 years ago, I guess.
I'm very excited for them to be back together. I think Jordan Whitehead has improved compared to when we saw him last play in a Bucs uniform. So to see him come back and just be better, and Antoine Winfield just being the best safety in football, I think our safety room is good. Corner, I think we need to address that early and maybe often in the draft, if I'm being honest. Bryce Hall has played double-digit games one time in his career. Every other time has been under double-digit games. He's got 2 picks, 122 tackles, I think, total. I guess the production is there if you look at it that way, because he hasn't played double-digit games and he's got a decent amount of tackles. But I don't get the point of taking a guy who is often injured as a depth piece for a position on your team that is often injured.
Yeah.
It's I don't get it, and I don't like the signing for that reason. I don't know a lot about Bryce Hall. Like, I'd be lying to you if I said I was an expert in Bryce Hall. To be honest with you, I thought it was the YouTuber Bryce Hall at first. But
That is.
In all reality, it's a signing. I'm happy to see them bring in somebody from the outside that's not just a Buck, but not the corner I would have gone with in free agency.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a fair assessment. It is a valid concern. You know, his injuries have been plentiful, unfortunately. But, you know, like it's tough because if if Jamel Dean goes down, then you kind of need a relatively competent starter to step in. And Bryce Hall, whether he can stay healthy or not is a big question. But I think as a depth kind of guy, you're not committing to the guy for multiple years. You're not giving him big time money. So I was kind of fine with it. I'm not super excited, but I'm also not necessarily super down on it either. It's just kind of like, okay, we'll see if this works out. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how that cornerback room plays out. But in other news with the Bucs, shifting over to back to the offensive side of the ball, we're kind of flip flopping back and forth. They swapped guards with the Giants, not in an official trade way, but Aaron Stiney, the Bucs left guard for the majority of the second half of last year, he went to New York, and the Giants left guard Ben Brendanson went to the Bucs. So it's kind of interesting there to see how that works out. For both sides, whether Stiney ends up being the Giants starting left guard, maybe he's more of a depth piece. Ditto that for Bredesen. He started quite a few games for the Giants there, but he'll have a battle on his hands with another guard that the Bucs signed a little later today, Sua Opeta from the Eagles. He started quite a few games last year in Philly. He was fine. He was basically just an average guard or maybe a little bit below average. So it'll be interesting to see how those kind of competitions play out. I thought those were kind of just worth mentioning. We don't necessarily – it's the offensive line because the Bucs are going to draft someone. I think we all have no doubt that they're going to be addressing the interior offensive line as the offseason move forward in the draft. But the big news I thought another big news story from this past week was in the division. Kirk Cousins to the Falcons. I wasn't shocked, but it was definitely really interesting. I was really intrigued by this move. That was probably the biggest move from the division. The Panthers trade Brian Burns to the Giants, but it's the Panthers. Who cares? You're right. I mostly wanted to focus on Kirk because the Falcons were close last year. They were an okay team with a really awful quarterback. Are you a bit surprised that they didn't trade for Justin Fields instead? And how do you feel about Kirk Cousins and how he affects the Falcons' chances this season? Zach, we'll start with you, man.
I love the signing for Atlanta.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I hate it for Tampa, but I love it for Atlanta. Like if I'm a Falcons fan, I will say there's a caveat to that. We have to see how healthy Kirk really is. Because he is an older quarterback who just tore his ACL or his
Achilles,
not ACL. Sorry. That's a bad injury to have, and especially when you're older in sports. So I know that Aaron Rodgers is doing his thing where he was planning on coming back before the season even ended. I don't know how much I trust all that. So that's the biggest concern to me. If I were an Atlanta fan, is what's going on with his injury. But they also got another wide receiver,
Darnell Mooney,
who I think is a very solid wide receiver too.
For sure.
But I'm a little worried about him this year, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned for the Bucs as well, but at the same time, he's also getting paid a lot of money. He's getting, $40+ million at the end of that deal. My goodness gracious, that could really come back to bite him. Musab, how about you, man? Were you surprised to see Fields not go to Atlanta or Fields not go anywhere at all? What were your thoughts on this signing?
Yeah, I mean, if I was a Falcons fan, I'd be happy with it. Like Zach mentioned, the only thing that would come to my mind on the bad side is just like the kind of the health status, with his Achilles injury. But other than that, I mean, I think this is really good for them. I think it's a big upgrade for sure. When it comes to Justin Fields, no, I'm not surprised at all. Never been too kind of big on Justin Fields. Not that I even hate the guy either, but I think that he's still kind of a rookie. I don't know. I think that he's still got a lot to learn, and he's just dealing with a lot. It's kind of just like it's a sticky situation. I'll just leave it at that. So that's why. So now, as a Bucs fan, yeah, this could be concerning for sure. Just because, the Falcons were looking pretty decent compared to us last year. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a little bit concerning because, man, if they don't have Desmond Ritter, I think they win the division pretty easily. Like even if they get average quarterback play, I think they win that division pretty easily last year because they had some really great performances from those defenders, and the rest of the offense was, it was okay. They just were actively shooting themselves in the foot by turning the ball over and over and over again. So I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to do that nearly as often, but some good news for Bucs fans is that if they're looking for some fresh gear, maybe they're a bit down, or maybe they're excited because Baker Mayfield's back, Lavonte David's back. Regardless of whether you're happy or you're sad, there's always a good reason to go to the shop.rblrsports.com website. You can find some really fresh gear there. Bring back the Devil Tampa Bay. The Lightning are playing right now. The Rays are in spring training. The Rowdies are gearing back up. Definitely go to the shop.rblrsports.com store. We'll give you a promo code Cannons, CANNONS. Type that bad boy in for 10% off your entire order and get yourself some fresh gear. Summer's coming right around the corner. Maybe you want a tank top or a t-shirt. Whatever it is, definitely check it out. We'd certainly appreciate it. So after that shameless shop plug, in case y'all missed it, I had a little mock draft this week. It was my turn to do my mock draft this week. So I wanted to have a little defense of it. So I'll just go through a little bit of it. Rounds 1 and 2, I went offensive line. Round 1, Troy Fataunu. Good gracious, I'm so sorry, Troy. Your last name eludes me. But he was a tackle in college who's more built like an interior offensive lineman, so they'll probably shift him over. I figure the Bucs are going to want to bring in some more rookie talent just to compete for either of the guard positions because Cody Mauch, that position is by no means safe. Either guard position is up for grabs. So I think they can bring in as much talent as they possibly can. So I think that'd be great. And then Bu Braid, the safety out of Maryland. This was before the Jordan Whitehead deal. So, I want to add that caveat. He still might go in the second round, though, because it's nice to have 3 safeties. The Jordan Whitehead deal is also only a 2-year deal, so it'd be nice to have a bit of a longer-term option. He's out of Maryland. Just a nice compliment, for Antoine Winfield Jr. and Jordan Whitehead. He can kind of sit and learn for a little bit, maybe make some starts in case injuries, God forbid. And then round 3, I went Jeremiah Trotter out of Clemson. Definitely a long-term kind of project type of guy. Really, really high legacy guy. His dad was an elite high motor guy, and his son's no different. His son's really great in coverage. Jeremiah out of Clemson is going to be really, really good in zone. I think the main concern is just his tackling and his run, his run suppression, which, what are you going to do? Then I went edge with Cedric Johnson out of Ole Miss, kind of similar to JTS, kind of a project guy, super athletic. And then Joe Milton, quarterback out of Tennessee. I know he's kind of a buzz name. He just got a huge arm. Probably the strongest in the draft. Also huge human being, 6'5".
Dude's a stud.
Yeah, I really like him. I know you'll like him because he's a Tennessee guy, Zach. I'm really excited to see where he ends up, and if he ends up in a Bucs uniform, all the better. And then I went Jadone Jank out of South Dakota State and Jarvion Howard out of Alcorn State. A couple of skill position guys just to round out the draft because the Bucs need some skill position guys, as much as I hate to admit, because I hate drafting skill position guys early. But I figured I'd wait until day 3. So figured I'd defend my decision making. And again, these mock drafts are going to change constantly because of the moves that the Bucs have made, as well as the trades that they've made. I didn't even include the Lions pick because now we're going to have an extra 3rd round pick to work with. So that should be a lot of fun moving forward. So did y'all have any objections or anything? Any strong feelings about it?
Yeah, you can tell this was done before the Davis trade and everything went down. It was
sure.
a solid. I would have taken running back earlier. You know how I feel about that, though.
Absolutely.
I love the Trotter pick. I was actually multiple times in my mock drafts before they were ever getting posted. I had him going in the 2nd round.
Ooh, yeah, fair enough.
He is a stud of a defensive player. I would love to have him in there. I think that he is, this is going to sound real bad, Devin White-esque in his, motor. Okay, let me rephrase that again.
Devin White was lazy. Come on
Super Bowl run Devin White.
I get you.
Pose that. But yeah, I love the Trotter pick. I think that's my favorite one on here for sure.
Absolutely. Musab, how about you, man? You got any critiques or any
Oh man, I'll tell you this, man. Round 6 and 7, all I heard was hidden gem and hidden gem for SDSU and Alcorn State. Man, I'll tell you this, man. I didn't even know Alcorn State had a football team. I was actually yeah, my buddy was actually talking about them a couple of days ago for basketball. But one I actually do like, Joe Milton, quarterback from Tennessee. I don't know. I say, listen, if it's round 6 and around that time, I don't think we're not going to have a round 6 pick now. But if he's still available in the late rounds, I say we go for it. I was bored actually one day earlier this week, and I was watching the NFL Combine for the quarterbacks, watching them do drills, and
he's a
I
great
did see
combine guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember a couple of comments were like, "Oh wow, I feel like Joe Milton's like stock just went up." And I remember one specific play. I think he purposely like just waited for the wide receiver to go even deeper,
Yeah.
and then he just went for the long haul. So yeah, I think he'll be a great kind of backup guy, someone we can work on for sure. But overall, I love it though.
The Joe Milton hype train is massive here in Tennessee. I am not a Vols fan. I guess I kind of root for him a little bit now that I live 20 minutes from where they play. But, like, Michaela is a Vols fan. My kids have already become Vols fans, which kind of upsets me a little bit. But this dude is a guy who there is video evidence of him rocketing a ball 85 yards with no run, like just standing still, rocketing the ball 85 yards. Like he has got. I don't think there's even a debate on if he has the best arm in this draft.
Yeah, for sure.
His problems are other places as far as accuracy and decision making. And a lot of the Tennessee fans here will tell you that it was not great at a lot of times last year.
For sure.
But give him the right system, and I think that he could do insane things. I compare him a little bit to like an Anthony Richardson-esque type of player.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking the same kind of thing.
For sure. He would be a really fun project guy to just sit on the bench for a while. Maybe if the Bucs like him in preseason enough, they keep him on the roster as a backup instead of Kyle Trask. I don't know. That's a big step because
that's a huge step. Kyle Trask is the best backup in the league.
Well, not even necessarily that. Just Kyle Trask brings the familiarity. Kyle Trask isn't necessarily gonna lose you any games, I guess, by making some really silly mistakes. Joe Milton just seems like he's having a lot of his issues stem from like reading plays, accuracy, stuff like that, which is stuff that can really get you into trouble in NFL games. He's relied a lot on it is the biggest arm in the NFL draft this year by far and away, but unfortunately he just couples that with a lot of big issues, which is why he'd be a day 3 guy.
I was gonna say that's stuff that could be fixed.
Yeah,
maybe. I don't want to get too ahead of
the way I see it is, I feel like it's kind of like Kyle Trask walked so Joe Milton could fly. Or the way I see it is, it's kind of like Kyle Trask was like Johnny Manziel, and then Joe Milton's about to be, kind of like the Baker Mayfield. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but like people have mentioned that Baker Mayfield is basically what like people had thought that Johnny Manziel would be, kind of that dog, that star in college, and then he balls out in the NFL. So, yeah, money Manziel. But no, I'm not just gonna I'm not gonna create or just build my own little Milton train, especially since we haven't even drafted this guy. I don't know if we will, but yeah, I'll stop there.
I will be creating a Milton train. I am gonna support him in the NFL just because I like.
I'm gonna make like an AI robot called the Milton Machine.
Oh man! I mean, Joe Milton. I'm glad I've started this conversation. Shoot, I mean that's some good stuff right there. I mean, I hope he ends up a Buck now. Shoot, I mean after all this,
exactly.
Yeah, after all this talking up we've done of him, but yeah, I mean, who we got this week? Who's doing a mock draft this week? Musab, Zach? Do I have to step up again? Who's doing
I don't. Do we want to go in a rotation now? So if we're going in a rotation, I guess it's back to me because it was Musab, you, and me.
Sure, that sounds great, man. So if you're listening, expect a Zach Blaine mock draft Monday, hopefully on Twitter at RBLR Sports. Give us a follow. So yeah, that'll be our next mock draft. Then we just organized that during the podcast. Look at us,
you all love it. Don't lie.
Two birds with one stone. Anyways, moving on. We're talking about the draft, so we might as well start introducing our positions of need. It's one of my favorite times of the year because we go from this positions of need in the draft to then every episode we talk about different positions, different prospects. It's a really exciting time. But you obviously got to build the foundation of establishing which positions are the most important. So we'll go through position by position, just talking about them. So we kind of came to this unanimously, although actually it was our own Musab Tariq. We just took his list. That's just the list that we took. So definitely shout out to Mr. Musab. But without further ado, I'll stop hemming and hawing. So the first need, number one, cornerback. And Musab said this before the Carlton Davis trade, by the way. So not saying he's a prophet or anything, but anyways, so cornerback was number one, edge number two. Love that. The pass rush last year was much maligned. Interior offensive line came in at 3. Also really love that. Safety at 4. I'm still really sold on that. Linebacker at 5, running back 6, and wide receiver was the 7th and final position of need. I really enjoyed that. Like I couldn't have written it better myself because I didn't. Musab did. So yeah, I'm really stoked about these positions of need. Honestly, if they drafted this out like just in this order, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised. Because safety and linebacker 4 and 5, I think is a really good sweet spot, and cornerback and edge kind of consensus. I think if you ask any Bucs fan, they'll say, yeah, cornerback and edge rushers. That's what the Bucs need right now. And I don't think you'll get much resistance from anyone. But obviously, there are still plenty of positions that missed the cut. So what are the positions that come to mind for y'all that kind of were on the precipice, kind of on the edge, no pun intended? Zach, we'll start with you, man. What positions barely missed the cut for you?
I will also lead into this with, I think this is why I love this segment so much, because we have such differing opinions. Like,
absolutely,
we all had kind of the same positions on our lists, or the same positions of need, just in different orders, and I love it. The position that just missed the cut for me is tight end.
Okay, yeah.
I feel like it could be in there. It's kind of interchangeable to me with. At this point, I'll be honest with you, I would take safety out because of the Whitehead trade.
Interesting.
Or not trade, but the Whitehead signing. I would drop that down lower and bring tight end into it. Put safety right out of missing the cut. But
wow, okay.
With that being said, I agree with we need a backup safety for both of them, both of our starters. But yeah, I think for me on this list, tight end is the one that just missed the cut.
Yeah, tight end's a great one because Cade Otton, my goodness, he played like 1,500 snaps or something crazy last year. It was an insane amount of snaps that he played last year, way too many.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, tight ends definitely wouldn't be surprised if they maybe tried to trade, get an additional pick in order to acquire a tight end. That wouldn't be a surprise at all. Musab, you made the list. So what positions barely missed the cut for you?
All I can think about is tight end. Just because of what our tight end room is looking like at the moment. We got Cade Otton, who's doing the most. Koki, kind of just who's a primary blocker. Payne Durham and David Wells. They're just here and there. I'm happy with what they did, but I mean, come on, we definitely need someone who is as good as Otton for sure to help him out. And I also will say that our tight end room is also really young. So that's definitely something to think about for sure. Is maybe it's just a project that we're working on or something, or who knows, maybe we do something during the offseason with these free agents. But I will say though, looking at this list that I had cooked up, now, and because Zach had mentioned the safety position, I wouldn't be surprised if things change a little bit. And I actually wouldn't mind actually bumping up wide receiver a little bit more.
Interesting.
And then, or I would put tight end up. I would just put everything out top. So linebacker 5, running back 6, wide receiver 7, and then we'd put in tight end. Just because I think that we do need to think about the skill positions as well, like the wide receiver. We got Godwin and Evans, but Trey Palmer a little bit inconsistent, and then didn't see much from like Raheem Jarrett and David Moore. Again, we didn't see much of either. So definitely something to think about. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to missing the cut, I would just do tight end.
Yeah, I mean, tight end is definitely most obvious. I think the biggest just missed the precipice of this list. So yeah, I think tight end's probably the biggest one. I'd also be kind of intrigued to see if they go interior defensive line at all. I know that they spent a first round pick on Kalijah Cansey last year. He's been fantastic. So there's no necessarily reason to try to jump up in the draft and take one. But, Logan Hall is the other interior defensive line. Greg Gaines is fine. Like they're all fine, but it's just, they could use a little help. I don't know if William Golston is coming back or if he's retiring or whatever is going to happen there. So I wouldn't be surprised to maybe see them spend a late round pick on that position as well. So tight end, interior defensive line, definitely the two positions that barely missed the cut. But I thought it was kind of interesting. None of us have brought up quarterback at all. Like we're chilling, and I think that's accurate and great. But man, if you would have asked me that, like, hey, do you think the Bucs are going to draft a quarterback next year? I probably would have said yes. But this year, I don't know. I don't think so. So
I said it last episode. I didn't think Baker was going to resign after seeing some of the stuff that I had seen. So
yeah.
Had you asked this question a week ago, I would have said quarterback would have been on that list.
Yeah. But now, shoot, I mean, Joe Milton was kind of a fun little, Joe Mixon's a running back. My goodness, mixing up our names. Milton's a kind of a fun little mention. And if they spent a 7th round pick on him, then hey, more the merrier. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting. So yeah, I don't know. So y'all mentioned that sort of the Jordan Whitehead move kind of influenced this list a little bit. Are there any other free agent signings that affected this list at all, or do you see any free agent signings that could affect this list at all for you? Musab, we'll start with you, man. How are you feeling about free agency and how it could affect the positions of need in the draft?
No, I'll probably just say, I mean, we were talking about earlier with the linebacker room. I feel like the signings that we did want, or the ones that, were appealing, have already kind of been taken. So other than that, I mean, that's really about it.
Yeah, I do think that linebacker is going to be a really interesting one, because if they do, sit out in free agency on it, I do think that they probably spend a 2nd or 3rd round pick on it. That might move it up a little bit. Excuse me. But if they sign one, then it might not even be a priority at all, because they've already got Servassier, Dennis, and KJ Britt. So maybe they're comfortable with those two guys being sort of the 3rd and 4th linebackers. So yeah, that'll be really interesting to see moving forward. Zach, how about you, man? Are there any free agency signings that might alter this list, or any that have already been made that would alter this list?
I mean, for me, if you could bring in, I know it's not going to happen because I think he's going to be asking for too much. A guy like Tre'Davious White, a guy like Stephon Gilmore. He's older, but he still can produce. You bring in, there's a few corners in the free agency pool still, actually quite a few in the free agency pool, that I would be happy to sign and move cornerback down this list. There are multiple corners that I think could start day one for us out of free agency and not take cornerback completely off the list, but drop it down. Like if you bring in Stephon Gilmore or Fuller or even White, I think that a 1st round pick on a corner is crazy at that point.
I agree. Yeah, I think it definitely drops it down to below maybe 4 or 5. But yeah, if they brought in a Gilmore or a Tre'Davious White, I mean, my goodness, both of those guys would be pretty interesting. Yeah, and safety too. Like if they brought in a backup safety, then yeah, maybe you do move safety below linebacker, running back, and wide receiver. And there are so many safeties out there. I mean, my goodness, it's a
All
plentiful
of the safeties,
market.
I feel like
Yeah. I mean, it feels like everyone's switching teams. Because I mean, I saw it yesterday. Camden Curl from the Washington Commanders, he signed with the Rams for like $8 million a year, a 2-year deal, and he's a young guy. Like he's only 24, 25.
That one shocked me.
Yeah, I thought he was going to get a lot more money, but because the safety market is so plentiful, maybe the Bucs are able to go out there and get a little bit of a cheaper deal on a safety. And I hate to bring up, what's that?
Give me Jordan Poyer, Oregon State alumni.
Yeah, Jordan Poyer would be great, but even necessarily maybe a little bit of a cheaper option, Mike Edwards. Bring the whole gang back together. Just bring everyone from that Super Bowl team run back together. I mean, he'd be a lot cheaper than Poyer or Micah Hyde or some of the higher profile safety options. So I think he might be a little bit more realistic, but that'd be a really interesting option for the Bucs. But getting into the specifics of, the draft picks themselves, because obviously the Bucs have a set number of picks and they have their set positions, but there are always trades. You've already seen the Vikings and I believe the Texans make a deal. Do you expect the Bucs to maybe trade up or out of the first round, or maybe you kind of expect them to just stay put? Zach, we'll start with you, man. What do you think the Bucs are going to do with this first round pick?
I couldn't tell you right now. Right now, it's hard to
Sure.
tell. With that being said, if they trade out of the first round, I think that's insane.
Really?
Yeah, this team needs impact players at certain positions, and I think that trading out of the first round, unless you have like the first pick in the second round for the first round pick, like, you get what I'm saying? Like,
right. No, I get you.
for a very high second round pick with your first round pick, I think it's crazy to give up a first, especially with the 5th-year option on some of these guys. Because if you get a starting caliber corner, you have him for 5 years guaranteed at that point.
Yeah.
If he works out, like, obviously, Sauce Gardner, if you pull a guy like Sauce Gardner, like, you're accepting that 5th-year option, because if you don't, you're paying him $30 million a year. Like,
right.
So I think to trade out of the first round is crazy in this scenario, because we do need so many pieces still. But trading up, I would not be opposed to. There's a couple corners I would like further up than my previous mock drafts.
Okay, fair enough. Musab, how about you, man? Do you think it's crazy to trade out of the first, or maybe you're a little bit more in the middle?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do not want them trading out the first. I mean, I want them to get the best player available, and I'm open to trading up if it makes sense. But I mean, as Zach mentioned, to me, it's also a little too early to tell. But as of right now, I'll just say stay put. I think where we stand with the draft, I'm happy with.
Wow. Well, I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to say I would love for them to trade out of the first round.
You
because
would.
And
I
why
am
is it?
I am a huge trade out of the first round guy. Accumulate those draft picks, baby. Just collect them. Just have them sitting there. Because then I'll tell you what they can do. Because then maybe instead of just having a second round pick and then 2 third-round picks, maybe they have 2 second-round picks and 3 third-round picks. Because the back end of this draft, I will give you, it's not great. Like, the depth of this draft is not wonderful. So that's kind of the consensus here, is that it's a very top-heavy draft. But that doesn't mean that you can get a lot of value in that middle round. And picking at the end of the first round, I mean, it's kind of tough, because like Zach and Musab mentioned, that the 5th round, the 5th-year option is great. But you can kind of take advantage of that, right? Like, you can say a team is early in the second round, maybe they attach a future second round pick or a future 3rd or 4th round pick to trade up to the first round so that they can get that 5th-year option. And then the Bucs are just saying, oh, well, we're kind of accumulating picks here, continuing to revamp and rebuild this roster. Just get as many chances at the pie as possible. But hey, you never know. Maybe they do trade up in the draft and make me sound like an ignoramus. We'll see. But I'm really excited to start a draft season. I'm chomping at the bit. Next week we'll start talking about positions specifically, and definitely tune in for that. If you like what you heard and you want to hear those draft previews and us talking more about the positions, definitely hit the like and subscribe button. Also give us a follow at RBLR Sports, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We've got constant content coming out. So definitely check us out there. The ratio is going to be coming out this weekend, I know for sure. And that's going to be a great episode as well, because they're going to be doing a season preview. We've always got great content coming out. And the Bucs show is going to have some cool content next week. Like I said, the draft stuff is coming up. We'll also be doing a live draft stream of the first round. So definitely stay tuned for that. But until then, and until next week's episode, we really appreciate y'all tuning in. But as always,
Go Bucs.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.